The funny thing about these questions is that they really do vary from very shallow surface things to some things that are suddenly very deep. So uh, it's a challenge working through a list like this. I have to admit I've paused more and have thought more about some of these questions. I said initially that I was just trying to keep it conversational and off the cuff, but some of these things really do demand some thought. So uh, I'm trying to keep it as fresh as I can. What do you spend the most time thinking about? I have to admit, I am such a worrier. I really do spend a lot of time thinking about worst case scenarios. I think part of it is that I'm trying to prepare myself for the day that the worst case scenario does happen. And I also think if you worry about it enough, maybe it won't happen. So I think there's just that little game going on that if I worry enough, I'll be ready, and or it won't happen. So I don't think I come across as a real worrier, but I really am internally. It's a lot of stuff that's just on the inside. What is something you can never seem to finish? Uh, I really, I think these days I'm pretty good about finishing things, but there's one book I've only tried to read it a few times that I've never finished, and that's the Brothers Karamazov. Uh, it's a kind of a spiritual classic, I think. It's often quoted as such a great study of human behavior and human spirituality, and you know how much of a risk there is with faith, and uh, I just can't seem to finish it. So maybe someday. What mistake do you keep making again and again? Um, there's so many. I would say worry is probably thinking the worst about things, thinking that something isn't going to go well. Sometimes you can be a little too negative and have a self-fulfilling prophecy. Also, I think I put myself down too often. I've tried to leave that behind, but it's an easy pattern to get into. What's the best thing you got from your parents? Earlier, I referenced the sense of humor, and I think that's a great thing. But there's a bigger word a bigger concept that I think I'm really grateful for from my parents. I think I'm a pretty genuine person. My parents were both very steady, genuine people, and I hope I got that from them. I feel like I did. Uh, what is the strangest thing you have come across? Uh, People will often tell me, as they probably tell other priests, you should write a book. And there are some unusual situations you get pulled into. I think the one I have talked about the most, and I try to, I do it with a sense of humor. I try to have some reverence for the situation, but somebody asked me once to come to their house and close a portal because they had opened a portal to I don't know, another dimension or the dark side, and so I just blessed their house. That was a rather strange experience. If you could make a 20-second phone call to yourself at any point in your life, present, past, or future, what would you? When would you call, and what would you say? I think I would call myself about 5 minutes before I was ordained a deacon and say, "This is your calling, calm down." Because I had a little meltdown right before I was ordained a deacon, just a little panic that, oh my goodness, what if this isn't the right thing? And fortunately, there were a couple other classmates there saying, just do this. You've worked hard to get here. Trust the journey you've walked. But I think I would just say something like, "This is your calling, trust it." What's the best and worst thing about getting older? The best, personally, there are a lot of best things. I like the security of getting older. I think as you get older, you do really quit caring about a lot of things that cause such anxiety when you're young. I think having an income and just a home and some sense of stability, I think, is great. think when you're young, there's so much that's up in the air, and you move a lot when you're in school and going through different jobs, and it's nice to land somewhere. I remember thinking what a nice thing it would be to have a permanent address. And as a priest, you don't have a permanent address, but you get the same address for 10 to 12 years, and I love that. Worst thing, oh gosh, I think you can no longer eat with impunity. I could eat 3 or 4 donuts when I was younger and have no guilt whatsoever. Now, when I have a donut and it's rare, there's a lot of guilt with it. Any kind of food like that, ice cream or French fries, all that good stuff, it's really hard to let that go. But I'm trying. I'm trying just to moderate it. If you could have a never-ending candle that smelled like anything you wanted, what fragrance would you want it to be? This isn't a very creative answer, but I love sandalwood. It's really one of my favorite fragrances. It's a very common fragrance, very earthy fragrance, but that's probably what I would pick. Let's see, 2 more. What is something you are certain you'll never experience? Well, as a 57-year-old priest, lots of things. I'll never be a parent or a grandparent. I'm certain of that. I remember my dad telling me once, that you reach these ages in life where you realize certain things are never going to happen. And he said, I reached this point where I realized I'm never going to be president of the United States. I'm certain that'll never happen. I'm relieved it'll never happen. Lots of things like that. But I think I'm at peace with most of that. What challenging thing are you working through these days? Some things with aging. I think as you age, you kind of have to be ready for the adventure. That you can't sleep as well as you used to, or that you have certain maladies that start to express themselves. Like my dad and several of my siblings, I have restless leg syndrome, which is kind of a bizarre thing, but it really interrupts my sleep at night, and that's a tough thing. There's medication that I'm learning to be faithful to. I tend to resist medication, but I'm trying to learn to just accept that fact and take the medicine because it usually works.